X-Men. Get it!
Hey everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Battle of the Atom. This is, of course, your weekly Monday X-Men podcast where I, Zach Jenkins, and my distinguished co-host Adam Reck, we go through 3 X-Men stories and we put them on our list. Our very long list, our ever-increasing list, our infinite list of every X-Men story, where we're ranking them from best to worst X-Men stories of all time. Adam, how are you today? Yeah.
I'm feeling sleazy like a sleazoid, Zach, because today we're going to talk about some Brood, and I don't think we've talked about the Brood before, have we?
I don't know if we have.
Oh, no, we got it, because we did talk about the Christmas demon, Xmas demon, but that's not the Brood. That's
no, that's the Nagari. That's the Nagari. The other Xenomorph ripoffs. Claremont.
Yeah. There's multiple ones, right?
Dude really liked Alien. Dude saw that movie and said, this is great.
I mean, if you go to, I think it's just the Wikipedia entry for Brood, Cockrum talks about designing the Brood and like saying that all the script said was draw like this disgusting alien and that's what he came up with. I mean, I wonder how much guidance there was to make it seem more like H.R. Geiger or something like that. What do you think about that?
I mean, it was in the popular zeitgeist of, this is what an alien, this is what General Alien is, because you didn't want it to be the 50s, big-headed gray man anymore. Mm-hmm. You wanted it to be something different. And Geiger's aliens from Aliens, the Xenomorphs, truly did feel otherworldly in a way that a lot of things didn't, because they didn't feel like men in rubber suits, even if at some points they were. Yeah.
Well, okay. So I know we rank X-Men, but this is a controversy that I've seen pop up many places online. And I guess I'm on the wrong side of history. Do you prefer Alien or Aliens?
Here's my dirty secret. I've seen 3 movies related to the Xenomorphs.
Okay.
I saw Alien versus Predator, which was not good. I've seen Aliens, which was very good.
Yeah.
And then when I was like 7, my dad rented Alien Resurrection and immediately regretted his decision, but he was already deep enough into the movie that he wanted to keep watching it, and I got me some nightmares. Oh, my sister got it worse. She's a couple years younger than me.
That's so funny. I actually like Alien Resurrection. It's not a great movie, but
I remember not enjoying it at 7.
Well, I can't imagine why. It's not exactly a movie for 7-year-olds. So you've never seen Alien, the 1979 one?
On my list of I should really watch this seminal movie.
You should, yeah.
Just like everyone's got those, and don't tell me you don't. Don't tell me you don't have a list of classic movies that you've never seen. Everyone's got it. And as long as it's not Star Wars, you're okay.
Yeah, there's always going to be classics that I haven't seen. Whenever one of these like best movies of all time lists come out, I smack myself in the head and go, why haven't I watched that yet? But I am always fascinated by like how the influence of Alien, kind of worked its way into the X-Men like this in a very dramatic way.
It is. And what's really dramatic, at least what I think is dramatic, is that Patreon supporter Bobby, no last name, I'm going to call him Trevor Fitz. Bobby Trevor Fitz. He suggested an X-Men story about these xenomorph-like aliens known as the Brood, and that is the Brood Saga. He did that by going over to patreon.com/XavierFiles and pitching in as little as $2 a month to get an episode bespoke crafted around his particular brand of X-Men.
I appreciate that approach as opposed to, impregnating us with, some sort of brood egg and waiting for us to turn into some nasty alien. That's a much better approach.
It is. I don't know. I don't know what kind of voice boxes the Brood have, and I get that my voice is not as silky, buttery smooth as some other podcast hosts on this podcast. But I think it would be worse if I was an alien thing. Like if my thorax and all of that was like made of chitin or whatever aliens and bugs are made out of instead of, flesh and meat.
You know what I will say though about, and this is related, we can get started talking about this Brood saga, but it is really amusing to me as I'm reading this that like the Brood are so articulate. Like when they're doing experiments on Carol Danvers, it's like they're having these very sophisticated scientific conversations in perfect English. And I don't believe there's a spot where it's like translated from the Brood dialect. Like it's just like, no, that's just how they talk.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It's odd. I'm sure you could say, well, the Shi'ar gave the X-Men these sort of translator things at some point and just no prize it away.
Oh, sure.
It's
for sure.
We should stop talking about what we would be like as aliens and the Alien franchise and start talking about the Brood after 6 minutes of this garbage content that people do come here for.
You do tune in for that garbage content, folks. But I will tell you, there is very little garbage content in this run. I mean, we get really some artistic powerhouses here: David Cockrum, Paul Smith, Bob Wyacek on inks. This is a classic X-Men run.
Yeah.
So,
and particularly because the Brood Saga is something that is seeded for a little bit before it gets into full swing. We are talking about Uncanny X-Men numbers 162 through 167. And that's what we're going to call the Brood Saga because 161 is pretty much a standalone flashback that happens to take place right at the beginning of this.
Yeah, and we get there's like a little couple pages there, but it really gets started with 162, which 162, wow, that's a powerhouse issue.
162 might be the best issue of the Brood Saga.
Yeah, what a great issue of just Wolverine in this savage alien space, just doing what he does. The narration is, it strikes me as a little bit similar to the Wolverine mini. It's very reductive, straight to the point, and Wolverine's just doing his thing. He's trying to survive. It's really classic, great Logan.
Yeah, this is what good Wolverine writing looks like. It's way better than Snicked Bub, My Memories, Weapon X, Mariko.
Well, we get a little Mariko in here, too.
We do get a little Mariko in here. And I like Mariko, all things considered. But Wolverine has a tendency to brood, lowercase b, about whatever love interest he happens to have at the time. And his claws. His cursed metal adamantium claws. It's good. This is a fun set of issues. You mentioned it earlier, but the art in this, we do halfway through this lose Dave Cockrum, who Dave Cockrum's really good at drawing crazy sci-fi stuff. And like one of the biggest things he gets to do here is give Carol Danvers, current Captain Marvel, former Ms. Marvel, a new look and a new codename as Binary, which it definitely looks like if I didn't know that this was supposed to be Carol Danvers, this could just be another member of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, which speaks well to Dave Cockrum because it's a very Dave Cockrum look.
It's cool. I like it. I like that her head is like just kind of its giant star. Really good high contrast look with the red, white, and black. It's cool. I think it's neat.
And then we get Paul Smith, and where Cockrum could, he still had half a foot in the Silver early Bronze Age comic stuff. Paul Cockrum has Paul Smith. Paul Smith has a very different look to it. His lines are so clean and so crisp, and it is just absolutely gorgeous what he does with these characters. It's a lot of fun. And he does a good job with a lot of the big character moments. So the the big plot point of this is that Wolverine wakes up, everyone's been captured by aliens, but they've also been impregnated by aliens to turn into their new alien queen.
Mm-hmm.
And Wolverine keeps it secret that he's probably going to murder everyone if things go bad. Which,
yeah.
Here's the thing. Cyclops is right there. And I feel like, well, maybe he doesn't want to tell Kitty Pryde, hey, kid, I'm going to gut you. I'm going to stick you like a pig. Cyclops is a reasonable enough dude that he could pull him aside and say, hey, Slim, you all may need to be murdered later. So let's watch out for that.
There's some good conflict between the two of them. I think Wolverine describes Cyclops' decision making as namby-pamby at some point here. I think I'm getting that right. So there's some really fun interactions with them that are kind of hokey, that are very funny. I think it's interesting that you mentioned the difference between Cockrum and Smith's art, because that was something I really thought about as I'm reading this. There's a huge transition here between the two artists that almost transcend different time periods. I mean, it feels like we're going from the 70s right into the 80s. All of Smith's characters are so super fashionable, and it brings a different feel to the story. Maybe a little less monstery and a little more cosmic in the way that he portrays things, because we were talking a little bit off air about this, but the resolution of this story is weird as all get out and involves Storm kind of becoming one with a space whale, and that somehow leads to the explosion and death of the Brood homeworld. I think I've got that right.
The ending's a bit of a
weird.
mess.
It's strange, to say the least, and everything sort of wraps up very neatly in 166 with binary tapping into a star. I don't really know what happens, but it's weird.
Sci-fi, science, and X-Men stuff happens, and the day's saved.
Yeah, and there's some really fun stuff along the way. There's some really great body horror things that happen in here. There's some good monster movie stuff with Kitty running away from the Brood. We get our first appearance of Lockheed, who pops up in here, which is great. And I also have to give props to the last issue here, which is after we've resolved everything in space, there is this really fantastic issue with Paul Smith on art duties where the X-Men return home and get into it with the New Mutants in the mansion.
Because they've never met.
And they've never met. The New Mutants assume that they formed because the X-Men have died, because it's been this stretch of continuity where the X-Men have not been on Earth, and Professor X turns into the Brood Queen, and wow, like what a cool issue. I like that one a lot. So there's a lot of really good things in here. I think it does go on for probably an extra issue. Maybe somewhere between 163 and 166, you probably could have lost an issue. But this is a really classic X-Men story.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it a lot. It's not my favorite of Claremont's stuff. I think there's a lot of stuff that I want to go to again. But look, okay, Claremont 80s and 70s X-Men is still better than most X-Men.
Yeah, and especially with these art teams, especially like this era with Paul Smith is really essential for me. I absolutely love the way he draws everybody. I love the way that we get the acting on the characters' faces. The way they stand even just tells you so much about them, and it's really good storytelling. Well, I love my Paul Smith.
I love my Paul Smith too, but I even think that there's better Paul Smith after this. Like the Wolverine
absolutely.
and Mariko wedding stuff is better than this. The the Morlock stuff is better than this. Like there's still good to come. Like this is from this beautiful era where X-Men was firing on all cylinders. So even a small misstep, like maybe stretching this out, like maybe 166 didn't need to be a double issue.
I was going to say that's part of the issue too. I mean, even though it's beautifully rendered and it's done, I mean, it doesn't need to be a double-sized issue. It just, it sort of contributes to the epicness of the storyline, I guess, if you want to say that.
What's crazy to me is the fact that such a small misstep like that just drops it below so many other things just because of how dense in quality Claremont, and specifically this early 80s stretch of Claremont was. Like, there's a 5-year stretch from like 80 to 85 where Claremont pretty much does no wrong, and it's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
Yeah.
This is
so I guess the question is, how high on our list does this go? Because one of the things that surprised me in rereading this was I was like, oh, the Brood saga, I remember liking that. And I'm reading this and I'm like, this is really good. Like, I'm really enjoying this story, and it's just how weird it is and how good the art is. So, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good.
Well, let's give the listener some grounding. Number 1 on our list is Days of Future Past. Number 87 on our list is X-Men Phoenix Legacy of Fire. Man, just here's the thing about the worst things on your list. You got to keep bringing them up.
Yeah.
It's still bad. This is between those two, which is a fair statement. I don't think this is as good as Life Death.
Okay.
I think Life Death is better.
That's interesting. Life Death 1 or Life Death 2? Because we ranked Life Death 2 at 13 and Life Death 1 at 14 on our list right now.
I personally think it's better than Life Death 1. But
Okay.
I'm willing to hear your argument.
I think here's where I'm coming from this.
Wait, did I say better or worse? I meant worse.
You think it's worse than Life Death 1? Okay.
Yes.
Here's my only issue with that. We ranked Mutant Genesis higher than Life Death at 11. I'm having a hard time saying that Brood Saga is worse than Mutant Genesis. I mean, and maybe this is just some buyer's remorse from ranking that higher than Life Death, but
that was
I don't know.
That was all you.
Yeah, like I really think that this is better than that. This is one of those storylines that I think people go to, as what X-Men should I read? And, people say, read Dark Phoenix Saga, read God Loves Man Kills, read the Brood Saga if you want to get a good idea of what like classic X-Men is all about. I don't know if that's like a testament to its staying power or how it should rank on this list, but I find it difficult to put it below that Jim Lee relaunch. I think this is better than that.
Well, let me posit
I hear
this.
you with the Barry Windsor Smith, stuff being like these amazing standalones.
Let me posit this to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that one-on-one, that first issue of Brood Saga, which is essentially a Wolverine solo.
Yep.
I don't think that that's better than Wounded Wolf. Pound for pound, I think Wounded Wolf is better. And I think Wounded Wolf gets in, does the same thing as that issue, and gets out and tells a more concise story where Brood Saga is probably a bit too long.
That's true.
I can definitely see the argument over like a Life Death 1 where, again, there's some issues where the Forge and Storm stuff in Life Death 1 is good, and the Rogue and Henry Peter Gyrich and Val Cooper stuff I don't care about.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I think my ceiling is Wounded Wolf. I hear you on Mutant Genesis, but I think you have to live with that albatross.
Well, then I'll just own up to that. So why don't we put it at 13? Because I think that's a good comparison, is trying to put Wounded Wolf up against 162, and Wounded Wolf wins out. So is Brood Saga our new 13?
It is. And just to be clear, these are all really good stories.
Oh yeah. We're just being picky because that's the whole point of the podcast, right?
Yeah, that's the gimmick. Do you know what else is a gimmick?
Please share. What else is a gimmick?
When a character becomes pregnant and oops, we don't know how this happened.
I believe that you're referring to our second storyline, which is Wolverine and the X-Men 5 to 7,
Yes.
where Kitty Pryde becomes pregnant with Microscopic Brood.
Yes.
Um,
Its official title is Mutatus Mutandis, which is Latin for made up thing.
Well, which is perfect because this is Jason Aaron and Nick Bradshaw on art. Any other credits that I'm missing here? Do we want to talk about inks or colors? Or
I mean, we
I
can
don't know them
mention
off my
that
top of my
Justin
head.
Ponzer does really good colors, but Bradshaw does most of his own inks. There's
Yeah,
Walden Wong does some of them as well.
I don't think we've talked about Bradshaw yet, though. I think we've touched on Jason Aaron because of the dupe issue of Waxum. But this this was a pleasure to revisit.
Yeah.
I think people really think highly of this series in general, and I think this touches upon a couple of the reasons why. The first being that we really do get a sense of this being a school and the students going to classes, which I love the idea of them going inside of Toad's body to learn about the the
Oh yeah,
circulatory system or
they have an
whatever.
incredible voyage.
Exactly. I love that idea, and I think that the whole storyline here with Professor Xanto Starblood coming to try and can either kill, destroy, maim, whatever little poor Brew, because he's not an actual Brood, he's a mutant Brood. It works pretty well here. I think it's got some really fun stuff going on.
Xanto Starblood is so Jason Aaron that it hurts.
yeah.
He is such a... So Jason Aaron operates on essentially one of two frequencies at any given time. He either operates on incredibly silly grindhouse stuff where Xantos Starblood falls, or he operates on dark, gritty stories about manliness, which is oddly enough where a lot of his Thor stuff falls. Though that kind of in the Mighty Thor stuff eclipses the gender side and more gets into terms of power and strength, which are themes that hit a lot of, are normally used in masculine senses. But it's the same themes that hit in the rest of Jason Aaron's work. But yeah, I like this. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I'm not as hot on Wolverine and the X-Men as like everyone else in the world is. It's just, it doesn't always do it for me. And I think what it is I can't even put my finger on it. I really can't. I just don't always buy everything that's happening in it. Like, it seems a bit silly to be silly. And while that's not always bad, it doesn't always work here for me.
And we have not mentioned the B plot here, which involves Logan taking Quentin Quire off planet to a casino and robbing the place.
Yeah, that was just weird.
Because of a funding crisis, which I remember enjoying these storylines so much just because of how silly they were. This series starts with Chris Bachalo on art, and then when Bradshaw takes over, it is a bit of a shift tonally. But I feel like when Bradshaw takes over, the cartoony comic sensibility of it, you mentioned it being kind of silly, it really does allow it to stretch out a little bit. I like this far more than maybe some of the other arcs, like the weird circus arc.
Oh, this is
where,
better than
I think
than the bad middle chunk of this series. The like post AVX.
Yeah, there are some other. Yeah, there are definitely some stretches of this that are a real mixed bag, but it starts very strong, and I think this arc is pretty solid. It's just, it taps into that weird madcap quality about it that obviously, is hit or miss.
It is.
Some people really loved this, and some people were kind of like, "Oh, is this X-Men?"
Yeah,
this doesn't feel like X-Men.
And I appreciate that not everything about X-Men is going to be what works for me. And not everything that works for X-Men for me is going to work for other people. I can get that. This just isn't, at the top of my list. I will say Nick Bradshaw's art, he does a lot of good, clean art. He's like a proto Art Adams.
I mean, obviously that's the closest comparison art wise, is to compare him to Art Adams, but I think he's extremely talented in his own right. He does things that Art Adams doesn't do. Um, in terms of the way that he does his page layouts and his storytelling that are very unique to his work. I think he's extremely talented, especially the amount of detail that he puts in. It's still cartoony, but when you really look at the pages, it's a lot of work
Oh
going
yeah,
into
yeah,
them.
absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, this is a
Beautiful stuff.
fun kind of inconsequential arc. I think it's good. It's not
Mhm.
my favorite of Wolverine and the X-Men. Uh, but yeah, where do you think it's going to go on our list? Where would you rank it?
Um, like you said, it's a fun, kind of silly thing that doesn't have a tremendous amount of consequence. So I don't know. I'm kind of looking maybe in the I'm looking down at like Last Will and Testament of Charles Xavier, which is, comes after this, or maybe even lower than that. Because, while I like this and it's fun, it's not essential by any means. It's just a really well done,
I
fun
think it's
story.
better than the
So,
stuff around Uncanny X-Men 275, the Savage Land and Shi'ar stuff. I think this is a
mhm.
stronger story, more rereadable than that. What I don't
Yeah.
think it's better than is Astonishing Tales Mojo World at number 53. That's where
Okay.
my gut's
Yeah.
saying, because while Astonishing Tales Mojo World
Mhm.
has some problematic elements to it, I think overall it's another fun, wacky story, which that I think is
Yeah.
good and definitely for a very specific fan, but isn't a be all end all X Men for everyone.
Mhm. I think it's an interesting comparison. I personally like this better. I think I would probably put it ahead of the Dracula
Okay.
issue too, by my taste. But I really like, obviously as an Art Adams fan, I also gravitate to Nick Bradshaw's artwork a lot. And I did like Wolverine and the X-Men. I can understand its flaws, but I enjoy reading this. I think it's fun. I think Brew is such a cool character, and I wish that he got a little bit more daylight,
I think
because you don't really see people playing with him
Well,
right
I
now.
think the problem with Brew in general is that Jason Aaron didn't really play with him, all things considered. He's in
Exactly. He gets
Yeah,
thrown
he's in
away.
two arcs essentially. He's in the background for a little bit while AVX is happening, but AVX kind of pulls away from the students of the Jean Grey School uh, to deal with the crossover. And then Brew gets shot and spends the next like
Hmm.
4 or 5 arcs being Savage and not being the character that you got to know initially.
Exactly.
And then it comes back and
Yep.
he's the same character that he was in issue 1. Like I know especially in this
Hmm.
arc, Aaron tries to add some fears and some, desires to Brew, and I think that's very good. But I don't think there's much you can do with that, because the thing is, okay, Brew can't go Savage and has to avoid that. Okay, but Brew's not someone who's putting himself in those situations to begin with. Like that's not tension that you're
Hmm.
going to see. Like Rogue, for example, Rogue can't touch anyone, but Rogue is thirsty. Like especially when
Hmm.
Gambit shows up. That's tension. That's tension that
That's
I can
fair.
believe, and that's tensions and fears and all this stuff that okay, I get. Brew, it's Brew. You can't eat
Yeah,
people, and he says, "Got it. Wasn't on my agenda, but I appreciate the concern."
see, I can see Brew as being, another beast on a team, because they set him up as like, this super smart character who is also extremely interested in science and experimentation. And I think there's a lot to be done with that. Like it could be a cool super scientist who's self experimenting and maybe making some mistakes and evolving in some different ways. I think there is stuff you could do with him, but you're absolutely right that he gets sidelined, because the potential that's set up here doesn't really get capitalized on. All right, I'm sorry, we got totally side stepped from the
We
actual
did, but it's
ranking.
fine.
So, um, All right, so you wanted to put it at 54. I think I would probably put it at 52. How high are you willing to go?
I think it's fair because I can see the argument that this is better than that Dracula issue. But I surprisingly do like Wolverine Snicked a lot.
I do too. So I don't think I would go higher.
That Wolverine Snicked. I think half of it is because it's the only saving grace of that terrible episode.
That's a fun series though. People should check that out. It still surprised me, All right, so we're saying 52.
Man, that's always fun. Is Wolverine and the X-Men numbers 5 through 7, Mutatis Mutandis, which is not made up Latin. It's real Latin that is used when comparing two or more cases or situations, making necessary alterations while not affecting what the main point at issue is. So essentially saying like, hey, these are the same in this particular circumstance. Don't be pedantic and say, well, they're actually different because of this, this, and this, because that's not what we're talking about. Which is completely unusable because no one else knows what it means, but is that's a very powerful thing.
I'm just pretending I'm understanding what you're saying.
Like it's essentially saying all other things. You want to
tell them what our third story is?
Yeah, we got another story.
Yeah.
So as we record this, in a week, I will be traveling down to Narlands, which I don't think people talk like that. That was a very bad Cajun accent. I wasn't even trying. I think I sounded like someone who, I don't know, was doing a bad accent, but not a very descriptive one.
Nolans.
I don't know. I'm not even going to try because maybe someone who is from Cajun country is listening and would not be thrilled with us butchering this, as Claremont does when he writes Gambit in X-Men and Ghost Rider, Brood Trouble in the Big Easy. Claremont didn't write this. I'm sorry, the accents were just so bad, I assumed he did.
I believe we've got Scott Lobdell?
And Jim Lee.
Yeah, okay.
And Howard Mackey.
Yeah.
And on art duties, we got Jim Lee doing the X-Men stuff. We got Howard Mackey doing the Ghost Rider stuff. And these are some weird issues. Now, it's X-Men 8 and 9 and Ghost Rider Volume 3, 26 and 27. I know X-Men 8 is of specific importance to one Arthur Stacy and or Adam Rack.
Boy. I hope that X-Men 8, it really should stand out as the glowing example of this Jim Lee run, because I love this issue. It really, for the large part, has nothing to do with the rest of the story, Brood Trouble and Big Easy, which involves the Thieves Guild and the Assassins Guild and the Brood.
And Ghost Rider.
Yes, and Ghost Rider.
And the 90s Ghost Rider, Danny Ketch.
Yeah, with his badass black motorcycle, which is great. But issue 8 as a standalone, which involves Bishop being introduced to some of his biggest fanboy crushes, the X-Men, and finally revealing some of the backstory here about the betrayal that may have led to the death of all the X-Men, and Jubilee being the last X-Men. Not to mention this bit with the pie.
Oh yeah, you didn't even mention Rogue and Gambit going on a nice picnic, and then Gambit gets pissy with Bishop and charges a pie and throws it at him.
Oh, wow. This is so great. And, this is just prime example of really fun X-Men stuff that I really enjoy. And I don't know. I really like it. It doesn't have a lot to do with the rest of the storyline.
The rest of the storyline is nuts.
Oh, it is absolutely bonkers. Because we go then into Ghost Rider, and there's this weird sort of Venom-y thing going around killing all of Gambit's pals. And then we get the Brood. The Brood has also managed to infest everybody. So
we also meet Gambit's wife, Belladonna Belladrew. Well, Belladonna
Yeah,
of the Tease Guild.
the Thieves Guild. Everybody wears these like weird body stocking metal plate deals.
The Thieves
Can I?
Guild
I
and
just
the
gotta
Assassin's
say,
Guild are just none of it
what
makes
is
sense.
this?
None of it makes
No.
sense to do the jobs that are in your names. You're both bad thieves and bad assassins, and I don't care that Caldara is, trying to give favor to one of you. You should all be really checking yourselves because you will, in fact, wreck yourselves.
Oh my goodness. I've always been just absolutely confused and maybe even mortified by like what the heck is this conflict supposed to be? And I know it's integral to Gambit's backstory, but it just I don't know. It does not click for me. I've never
It just doesn't
understood
need
it.
a backstory. It's every time you
No.
go to Gambit's backstory, it's worse. It's like his first miniseries
Mhm.
is okay, and everything past that is just ugh.
Yeah, can he just be a guy in body armor, a head sock, an overcoat with a staff, and charging cards that steals stuff from people? Like that's enough,
Yeah.
right? Like does it need to have this, or this crazy backstory? Anyway, so I think you said this before we went on air, and I also wrote it in my notes that this does feel very much like a real good distillation of the
Yeah,
animated
this is
series.
a Saturday morning cartoon.
Do you?
This is what it is. That first issue,
Yeah.
X-Men 8, is good,
Yep.
does some nice X-Men character drama. The rest of this garbage comic is just, it's straight up, we're going to have big fights, very little in terms of plot that makes sense. The Brood are just going to be monsters. We're going to have Ghost Rider come in because he is very cool. And anyone who tells you otherwise is lying. He is a biker man with a flaming skull. He is objectively really cool. But like this is just a cartoon. And it's a lot of fun, but it is a cartoon.
Well, especially X-Men 9 is, just the connective tissue between Ghost Rider 26 and 27. It's just, a full issue of let's hit stuff, or let's try and rescue these very nondescript characters and while we continue to hit stuff and give an excuse for Wolverine and Ghost Rider to go at it. But you're right. Like there's not a lot there. And the conclusion of this involves Ghost Rider ripping the skeleton out of a queen brood. It's just pretty over the top. And
shouldn't they have exoskeletons? Like, let's look at the Brood physiologically. They shouldn't have internal bones.
I thought something similar, but if you go back to the Brood saga, there is a panel, I think, where Kitty may see some Brood skeletons somewhere along the line. So
I'm not saying there's not
it doesn't make
continuity. No, it shouldn't happen, is what I'm saying. I don't think they designed these characters very well.
You know what this reminded me of a little bit? I was talking to someone online about Monsters Unleashed, which is the quote unquote new Fantastic Four from Walter Simonson and Art Adams, which involves Hulk, Wolverine, Ghost Rider, and and Spider-Man. And
yes, Peter Parker. He's very famous. Have you heard of him? Some people want pictures of him on the regular.
Some people even pay for the privilege. But, I think the inclination in this conversation was, I've never read that because, that's just like a 90s cash grab. And I was like, no, you got to read it. Like, it's an amazing story. And, maybe we'll rank that at some point. But this, it is that, like this is clearly a 90s crossover cash grab that I'm surprised didn't involve like, I think the Ghost Rider 1 was like a glow in the dark cover or something like that. I remember, is that what it was?
25 was.
Yeah.
25. I'm going to look this up right now because it's kind
I
of
definitely
awesome.
remember also in this era going to the comic book store and buying packs of Ghost Rider cards, and the specialty cards were not holograms; they were glow in the dark cards because, like, I guess being in the dark was cool. Um, but this story feels like that, like it's like, here we go. Here's an excuse for two characters to beat on each other. And there are still some fun moments, like Jubilee makes a new Warriors joke. There's a good bit with Beast talking about Jubilee not being covered by the X insurance, which brings up a host of questions about the
how Charles Xavier takes out a lot of
Yeah.
life insurance policies.
that there's insurance.
Which I think is a joke we've stolen and used on this show.
I mean, it does bring up some
previously.
really interesting questions about health coverage and things like that. And why wouldn't Jubilee be covered by them? But okay. But yeah, I mean, end of the day, we don't really learn a lot and everybody just beats on each other. And there's no consequences that come out of it. There's some cool art.
It's not.
It
is. We should rank this. By the way, if you're yelling at your phone, it's Ghost Rider 15 that has that awesome glow in the dark cover.
Very cool.
I knew it was some sort of
remember
round-ish
that.
number. Round adjacent. All right. Where do we rank this? I'm going to say this is better than X-Men 10 and 11, the Mojo 2, the obligatory sequel.
Yeah, Jim Lee's still in it. Scott Williams is still in it. They're doing some high quality Lee and Williams stuff there. But there's not a lot of substance here. And
that story's at 77 right now, by the way.
Yeah. So I am looking lower than that. Is this better than, I don't know, Silver Age X-Men #1?
Maybe. Is it better than another Saturday morning cartoon thing that we said at number 70, Phalanx Covenant, the Wolverine and Cable ones, Final X Sanction or something? Final Sanction.
I think it's better than Final Sanction. I mean, you're right, though. Final Sanction's a good comparison because that was just like, let's go and blow stuff up. Is it better than Spidey and the X-Men #1 and 2? Sauron can't cure cancer. He just wants to turn everybody into dinosaurs. How high are we going here?
Objectively?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Well, then I think we found our...
And in my heart, also no.
Well, then we found where it goes on the list, I think.
I think we have. This will be the new number 70 on our list. X-Men / Ghost Rider. Brood Trouble in the Big Easy.
Nice.
And that was both a big episode and an easy episode.
Mm-hmm.
And, this has been Battle of the Atom. You'll survive your experience in the future, but until then, this entire episode was brought to you by Bobby Fake Name, whose name I completely forgot at this point. I've just been riffing for like 40 minutes since then, guys. I don't keep track of a lot of my goofs. But thank you, Bobby. I legit appreciate your support. If you want to be just like Bobby, if you want to be just like him, or any of our other Patreon supporters who are all fabulous humans, or at least fabulous robots with bank accounts, I can never be sure, and I don't want to judge. You can go over to patreon.com/XavierFiles and pitch in as much as you want or as little as you want. At the $2 a month level, though, you get a reward where we will craft an entire episode of this here podcast around one of your suggestions. We have some very interesting ones coming up in the near future. Mm-hmm. So, get those in because we got a lot of them. And if you want yours to be done sometime soon, that might be a good place to just get in early. Everything else, Xavier Files, is at XavierFiles.com. That's where I do weekly articles about different X-Men characters. Also has all the latest in X-Men news. You can follow me on Twitter at Xavier Files. And another plug, the Xavier Files zine has been out for a little while now. I probably still have physical copies, but the digital copy will always be available and always be for $0. So you can always go and get that at links that you can find around town or on social media stuff. Hey, Adam, where can people find you online?
Guys, you can always follow me on Twitter at Arthur Stacy, and new pages of Bish and Jubes are coming out on a weekly basis on Mondays at adamrec.tumblr.com. So check those out.
Good. Well, next week we go into space, ? Or maybe some other dimensions in some cases, as we talk about 3 X-Men stories that involve alien cultures and the X-Men just kind of going to them and doing interesting stuff. But until then, this has been Battle of the Atom, and we hope you survived the experience.
Get it!